Africa must take its destiny in its own hands. I'm going to form a foundation that's going to promote Agenda 2063. And then we build that Africa that we want. Because the one we have is not the Africa we want. And in preparing Agenda 2063, then we invited different sectors because we didn't want to sit in Addis and write Agenda 2063. We wanted it to come from the Africans themselves.
Yeah. So it's very inclusive, and it's also their collective thought of all peoples of Africa, right?
Yes. The most precious resource we have is the people. The most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
We are still living through the problem when global North is exploiting global South, but with it new ways.
One, ensure that our minds are decolonized. Achieve what is on Agenda 2063. The continent will be a prosperous continent, will be an integrated continent with a development that is driven by its own people. And it will be playing a dynamic role in the global arena.
Your Excellency, Ms. Dlamini-Zuma, it's our utmost pleasure and great honor for you to agree to be given an interview to us. You're definitely known all over the world, and you paid special respect in Russia for your outstanding achievement as a woman, as a leader, as a professional in politics. And it's really, a very emotional moment for me. So I'm very sorry if I would be sometimes getting too emotional, but it is truly something that I personally am sure our listeners and our watchers would remember for a long time, and would be listening and seeing. The younger ones will be seeing, okay, how they can construct their own way in order to ensure that, their life could be meaningful. It's not about you. It is about what you give to the world and how much significance you can bring to the world.
Well, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much once again. If you could name probably being the Minister of Foreign Affairs, what was the biggest challenge at that time? And what was the most telling lesson that you learned from during this, your being a minister?
When I was foreign minister, one of the challenging issues on the continent was conflicts. For instance, there was a conflict in the Congo, the DRC, conflict in Burundi, conflict in the Comoros. And so understanding that there cannot be development when there's conflict, we had to attend to those conflicts. But equally, I also learned that you cannot sustain peace if there is no development. The two have to go together, peace and development. But I also learned as a foreign minister that you are as good as your team. You have to assemble a good team around you. So we worked a lot on the conflict areas, but we also understood that South Africa, without the rest of the continent, we can't go anywhere. Our fortunes, our development, our economies are intertwined with the rest of the continent. That's why our president, then President Mbeki, promoted the issue of African Renaissance, but also on the AU, transforming the OAU to the AU. The AU was launched on the shores of the South African, in the East Coast in Durban.
I also remember that you were you are the one and only woman who ever took the position of the chair of African Union. So what do you think was most important, what South Africa pushed through in probably resolving some conflicts, as you mentioned, because it was devastated at that point. We still have many conflicts, but now it's not just a feature of Africa, it's a feature of all over the world. African Union is not just about security, right? It's also about social well-being, economic prosperity, and justice, because this is important that we are learning for justice and fighting for it.
Yes, so far, I am the only woman who has chaired the African Union Commission. That was not just a South African chair. When we were campaigning, it was the Southern African Development, SADC, that actually campaigned. I was a SADC candidate. And so I carried that with me, that I'm not just here as a South African, but I'm here representing all the women of the continent, because I'm the first woman to chair this. So I had to be conscious of that. In 2013, I was appointed in 2012 towards the end, and I took office then. But in 2013, Africa was having a big celebration of the 50 years of the Organization of African Unity, which was now the African Union.
Yes.
So we had this big celebration, which was very good. And we also had representatives from the diaspora, because we had taken a decision earlier that Africa does not have only the 5 regions that are on the continent, but it has a 6th region of all the Africans who are outside the continent. Yes. Those who were taken as slaves, but also including those who have left voluntarily over the years. They have a right to participate in the AU as a 6th region. Yes, so they participated in the celebrations. In the 50 years, we celebrated the decolonization of Africa, because in 1945, some of the Pan-Africanists from the continent and from the diaspora met in Manchester. And one of the resolutions they took was that Africa must be decolonized within 50 years. Indeed, other than Western Sahara, indeed Africa was decolonized within 50 years. South Africa on the 49th year in 1994. So then I said, okay, they had a long-term plan, which then was achieved. So what is our long-term plan that they will celebrate?
Next goal,
in
next
50
challenge.
years,
Yeah.
yes. So that's why I came with the idea of Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, because 50 years will be in 2063.
So you're the author, right, of 2063?
Yes.
Oh my God, that's another one I didn't know about that. That's very, we talk about it, we teach students about it, and we know it's a milestone. That's, so please
Yes.
tell more about it.
We must define the Africa we want, and then we build that Africa that we want. There was a lot of toing and froing, people not quite understanding this thing of Agenda 2063, until the foreign ministers of the continent asked me to organize a retreat. And at that retreat, I must present this idea so that they can see whether they approve it or not. So indeed, we went on a retreat, and something kept bothering me about how am I going to present this idea in a way that will be acceptable. So we worked with one of my colleagues. We worked until midnight the night before. We still didn't come up with what we were happy with. Then after that, we said, okay, let's write a letter from the future. Let's write a letter from 2063 and say how we got there, where we are and how we got there. And we sat and wrote that till 6 in the morning. Then we said, oh, who do we write the letter to? Then we agreed we write it to Kwame. Mm-hmm. So at that retreat, when they asked me to make a presentation about this Agenda 2063, I just read the letter to Kwame. And they were all very happy.
I can imagine.
And they said, okay.
So human.
For the summit, don't prepare another presentation. Just read this letter. So we had consultations with youth, with women, with academics, with artists, with religious leaders, with almost every sector. You could scientists, we had workers.
So it's very inclusive, and it's also their like collective thought of all peoples of Africa, right?
Yes, yeah. And also it's not something that has to be implemented by one sector. Everyone has to say, what can I contribute to this Agenda 2063?
Do you see this as understood by today's youth? Because you put lots of soul in it and lots of thought, both. And people shared it. Do they share this thought, the current people? Because Africa is the youngest continent in the world. So how much of this is shared now by current youth?
When we were working on Agenda 2063, the youth of that time at universities, some of them started what they called AU clubs, where they were discussing this. But I think that has not been sustained. So one of the things that I would like to see is all those young people discussing, competing, writing essays about Agenda 2063, and also placing themselves in terms of when they leave university, what will they do to contribute towards Agenda 2063? And I don't know whether I can say what I'm going to say. I've thought that we should form a foundation. I'm going to form a foundation that's going to promote Agenda 2063 at all levels, at universities, with business people, with governments, so that they, especially the young people, understand what it is and why it's there and how they can contribute towards the implementation, because they have to be part of building the Africa we want.
We still go through this decolonization process. You said formally, yes, on the 49th year, things got rid of apartheid, but we are still living through the problem when global North is exploiting global South, but with it new ways. Global North is rising. There are countries like mostly China, India that grow faster, but there is much more needed to be done. Today, what we see, outside wishes of how things should be done often don't result in real development, but they result in stumbling of the development. Do you think it was at all successful, or you would say it's better not to have anything connected with the global Western or Northern entities? So African Union is the one, and African Union is the one forming the agenda. That should be the case.
Africa must take its destiny in its own hands. Nobody is going to develop Africa for it. We have to develop Africa for ourselves. And fortunately, we have all the resources that everyone else has used to develop their countries or their continents. We need to, one, ensure that our minds are decolonized.
Absolutely.
When we were students, we established an organization called the South African Student Organization, SASO. And our first president of SASO was Steve Biko, who was later murdered by the apartheid regime. But one of the things he said that stayed with me up to today, he said, the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So I think as Africans, we need to ensure that our economy is our economy and works for us. We have resources. Almost every mineral resource you can think of exists somewhere on the continent. But what do? We don't beneficiate those minerals. And that's what we must do now, beneficiate those minerals and not send them out raw. Secondly, we exporting jobs, high-level jobs that are going to beneficiate. So we sell cheap and we buy expensive. So that must change. But also, we need to, it's not only the minerals, the natural resources. I'm very happy that Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana have begun making chocolates. Because Africa sends the cocoa beans out and it gets roughly 8 billion.
And big benefits Belgium.
But the chocolate business is more than 100 billion.
Absolutely.
I hope more countries and even Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire will accelerate the chocolate making. Cotton. We export 90% of our cotton raw, and then we import fabric at great expense. And some countries export logs, wood, and import furniture. So all those things must change. We must manufacture here on the continent. But most importantly, we must have the skills to do it. And then once we have manufactured, we must have the infrastructure to trade amongst ourselves. So goods should move from here to Senegal easily, to Egypt, to Nairobi, to everywhere. Continent must be connected through road, rail, air, sea, ICT. We should be connected. And once all that happens, then we'll improve our trade amongst ourselves, but also trade with the world. We must also make sure that we grow what we consume what we produce. There is no need for us to be spending billions of dollars importing food. There's absolutely no need. 60% of available arable land globally is on this continent.
In Africa, yes.
So we have the land, we have the sunshine.
Yeah, abundant sunshine.
Abundant sunshine. We have water and we have people. And also we have young people. So we have all it takes. We must just ensure that we do it.
Absolutely.
We do it. We don't depend on other people.
You don't have to depend.
We don't have to depend on other people. We don't have to depend on aid, we trade, not aid. We must trade.
What you were saying rings the bell to me because you remember with OPEC countries,
Yes.
it was a similar case when their resources, after this Red Line Agreement of 1928, their resources were expropriated by, colonial practices just to 7 Western transnational companies. And when there was this big first energy crisis in 1973, I believe, 73, 74, they put it, yes, there was this conflict beyond Israel-Palestine and Arab-Israeli conflict as a whole, but we also had similar situation when many, Soviet Union was a big industrial power. Many industrial factories and plants were closed down. They were bought out by the foreigners and closed down just because they wanted to ensure that more of extraction of raw material goes inside. And if you go about refining, you go about further, high level of production. No, we're not doing it. So this is, classical approach. And I totally agree with you. If you want to go ahead, if there is progress, your fate should be in your hands. And yes, you are able, you have such beautiful possibilities to have good economic situation. You have people, young people.
Yes.
You have raw materials.
We have women.
Women, men, both. I think I'm fully for equality of opportunities. It's not about putting men aside. No, I think we should work together.
Men are already there. We want to be there
but
too.
we also want to join them.
Yes.
So it is extremely important. And it's one of the issues where BRICS could be helpful. Besides, South Africa is the first African country representing the whole of African continent for many years until last expansion, when Egypt and Ethiopia also joined it. Do you see BRICS could be one of the instruments in order to provide, let's say, favorable conditions for African continent to do what it needs and what it finds necessary for itself?
Yes, I think BRICS could be, because if BRICS were to assist us with the skills to train our young people, our women, our young men, to do the things we want to do, if they were assisting us to train, if they were also working with us in terms of building infrastructure that we need, it would be very helpful. And also for building infrastructure, that would also be a great help, amongst other things.
We do have, if you talk about education, bringing skills, I think one of the important achievements, we are now in the 10 years of it, from BRICS is the Network University. We have universities from all our countries joining together and doing joint degrees and joint programs for training in areas that are most needed. What do you think what else could be needed? Maybe some joint programs in IT, or maybe it should be bringing some joint university building in Africa, in South Africa, or what should be there?
Yes, I think in terms of skills, we need all the skills for manufacturing. There's no reason why Africa can't manufacture its own cars. We assemble other people's cars. We can manufacture and sell amongst ourselves and the world.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we can't manufacture electric batteries for the electric cars, because we have all the minerals that are needed for that.
Yeah, why take them out and do it elsewhere?
Yes.
Let's do it here.
Why not do the batteries here and then sell them to those who need them? So it's things like that. IT, same, in many areas, in energy. We have lots of rivers, for instance. Why can't we work on hydro, producing hydro, some of the rivers? Ethiopia has done it, and done it very well. And you can see now they're not short of electricity. So, but there are still countries on our continent. In fact, the majority of our countries are not energy sufficient. So if we were to get skills, assistance in terms of skills to produce energy from hydro, for instance, that would be very useful.
Do you see that there is enough of water potential? I don't know how much you are into that, because hydropower is very much compromising arable land and ability to give extra water for growing, plants. So you think it's it could be manageable both ways?
It can be manageable. For instance, we've talked about Inga Dam from the Congo River. We've been talking about it since time immemorial, but it's not there. It hasn't been built. But if that were to be built, it could supply maybe 5 different countries with energy. So it's things like that.
What do you see as a barrier for it to be built? So if there is an understanding, there is discussion, what is lacking?
The barrier is finance and maybe electric engineers can be found on the continent. But if we were not exporting things raw, we would have the finance to finance it. Also, we need to make sure that young people and women are part of driving the development. As you said, we're not excluding men. Men are already there.
Yeah.
We're saying youth and women should be there. Because can you imagine, if you leave out women, let's say you leave out women from the development, it means the continent is working at half its capacity. You are leaving out half your talent, or actually more than half, because women are slightly more. It's like trying to win a World Cup with half your team.
Totally agree.
Doesn't matter how good your players are. If they're only half on the field, they will lose to the poor, to the weakest team.
So that said, if I could ask more personal question, how did you manage to be, to reach such heights, being a woman, doing so much, pushing through not only many things in South Africa, but also launching the African Union and introducing this Agenda 2063. So what there should be done? What would you say to the younger girls, how they should behave, what they should do in order to achieve as much as you or even more?
Okay, but before I go there, I must say, to be fair, we must also work with progressive men to get the women out there. Yeah. Because if we work alone, we will not achieve as much. But if we work with progressive men who understand why women should participate, then we'll get there faster. And there are progressive men. Not every man is progressive, but there are progressive men. And I think we should also work with them. To young people, young women, well, maybe I should start with what was said to me by my father. My father said to me, well, he was a teacher, a primary school teacher. So he always brought that teaching even to the home. He said to me, girls, one of the things you must ensure is to get education and have a profession. And he said to me, if you have a profession, nobody can take it away from you. not your elder brother, not your husband, not even your employer, not even a thief can steal it from you.
No.
So ensure that you have a profession. And if you have a profession, you'll be able to stand your ground. And if things don't work out, you can walk away and go somewhere else. It was the first lesson I got from home. And indeed, I then tried to ensure that I do have a profession. And I think that helped me because at the back of my mind, I always knew I can go and practice medicine if all fails. I stood by my principles, by the values I believed in, because I knew I can walk away. I think it becomes difficult when people don't know they can walk away. So to young women, young girls, I would say education, education, skills, skills, profession, profession. Then from there you can go out to the world to do what?
And the world will have to accept you no matter what.
Yes, the world will accept you as you are. If it doesn't, you can walk away to a different world. Yeah. Yes. But also, you have to work hard. I believe that you have to work hard. Because if you don't work hard, then you get half the result. You have to work hard. Also, you have to surround yourself with people, sometimes who are better than you, so that they can bring in their skills, their expertise, their knowledge. Because I believe that you are always as good as your team. So you must assemble an excellent team around yourself. Believe in yourself, work hard with your profession, and be principled.
What were the other lessons or challenges? For example, you were part of the government of the first democratically elected government of Nelson Mandela. So were there more lessons after your father gave you? Something as important, probably?
Well, there were lots of lessons that I learned even from the organization, the African Union. In the government of Nelson Mandela, of course, it was a government, the African National Congress, which he led, had won the elections clean.
Yeah, landslide.
Right? But because it was time for reconciliation, then other parties were brought in. So there were 3 different parties. But what guided us was what our organization had set out to do in government. So as Minister of Health, I was lucky because there was a whole document, health policy of the ANC. So I didn't have to invent things. I had to just implement what was in the health policy. I had to bring the health policy to be part of the policy of government. We didn't have many difficulties. We were in the majority. We had won and we had policies that we had agreed to implement.
And you have clear goal where to go.
Yes.
Well, that's important. But what of this legacy you think probably should be more emphasized today in South African policy, or you would say it has to be maybe something very new introduced for it to be, to lead the continent and to have its people, have prosperity, have social well-being, have stability, and them being proud that our country is leading and our country is doing everything for us.
Well, one of the lessons we learned from Mandela as well was that education was the most powerful weapon. So education, skills is very important, and it comes from him as well. And he also taught us that you can't say, I'm finished. Because he told us that after every hill, you realize that there are more hills to climb. Mm-hmm. Yes. So you have to gear yourself that I'll finish this task, but there are more tasks.
So you don't relax?
You don't relax. Yes. You can take a breath, mm-hmm. but you must know that there are more hills to climb. One of his speeches when he went to the OAU, the first speech, I won't quote it verbatim, but he said that he made an illustration that whereas apartheid was destroying South Africa, will now be bringing the building blocks. The people are also the most important in everything we do. You can't do something for yourself. You have to do
for the people.
For the people.
I know I've been asking you a lot already, but if we can come back to BRICS. We're now living in extremely difficult times, geopolitical turbulence. It's getting worse. We know that I think it was yesterday, that Trump claimed that countries are now leaving BRICS because he threatened everybody. Everybody's so afraid of him and wants to get benefits from United States that they all stood up and left BRICS, because otherwise there will be extra tariffs on them.
Have they left BRICS?
I didn't hear from anyone so far apart from Mr. Trump, but that's his word. Maybe he knows more than us. We don't know. But as we saw, BRICS really was like an anchor or a beacon of hope for many, not just for us, its members. For us, its members, it's also a hard work, because we all live in different places all over the world, geographical positions. We're not even geographically, it's difficult to reach each other. You know what? With South Africa, we don't have direct flight.
Yes, that's unfortunate.
I know there was a intention to do so, but unfortunately, pandemic broke the situation, because back in 2020, I was told, it's all set now, we'll have a direct flight, which would have helped so much because it ensures for connectivity. But with all that, first of all, I think nobody else but BRICS has now retained the culture of negotiations and ability to listen to each other and understand each other's needs. And in current conditions, probably it is of utmost importance than anything else. But in these geopolitical difficult times, what is the role South Africa should be playing in BRICS? Because it's a two-way street, like what we do for each other, what we do for BRICS, what BRICS does for us. So what do you see South Africa wants to be getting more from BRICS? In which space? We touched upon it briefly, like having education and having this network university. Obviously, I didn't mention it, but I understood you meant it, talking about infrastructure, talk about new development bank of BRICS and its investments in infrastructure. But what else could be done for BRICS and by South Africa, how it could lead it further?
I think South Africa, when it's in BRICS, it should not just be there for South Africa. It should also be there for the continent. It should bring continental views also to BRICS. Ideas, views, and where possible, also get for not South Africa, but for the continent from BRICS. For me, that's the most important. But what is good about BRICS is that there is no superpower imposing itself on other people. It's an organization where people discuss, reach consensus, and move on.
Yes, it's not possible that, for example, China or South Africa or Russia say, okay, I want this and it will be done. No.
Yes.
You have to talk.
We have to talk, we have to negotiate, we have to come to an agreement, a consensus. And I think that's what BRICS brings to us and to everybody who's a member of BRICS.
What would be your wise thought with regards to, because South Africa is to preside in 2 years. So next year we have India, then China, and then South Africa. And then we start again with their expanded format. Of course, I know government will set their own priorities, but from your experience, what do you think should be on the table brought by South Africa as priority themes for 2028?
Well, I think you're right that the government of the day will set those priorities. It doesn't matter what I say today.
But maybe they will listen to a wise woman, you know? They watch it, oh, that's a good idea.
Well, I think we should actually, South Africa, working with BRICS, I think should see how we can implement the African agenda. And then BRICS countries can look at the African agenda and say, this is what we can do together. Because South Africa can't impose on BRICS, but it can say, here's the African agenda. What of these elements does BRICS think it can take on and work with the continent to achieve? We must try and get more and more countries developing faster. But we must also, my view is that we must also learn from one another. Because there'll be things of excellence in one country and different things of excellence in another country. But if we learn from one another, we can develop quicker.
Yeah.
For instance, I was just quoting the hydro dam in Ethiopia. Uh-huh. We must learn from that. But one of the things I also like from Ethiopia, maybe it's because I lived there, they established a women's bank.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, they have a women's bank. And at the time they were saying, the media was saying, women's bank, maybe it will just be a micro bank. But it's a proper bank.
Oh.
It's got at least 200 or more branches now across the country. Because they were also trying to resolve some of the financial issues that women face. So we can learn that from them. But we can also learn other things from other countries. For instance, I know in Uganda, they do a lot of goats for commercial purposes. Here in South Africa, for instance, we do goats, but they are not for commercial purposes. Families just keep them for certain rituals or whatever. Yeah. But if we were to say, okay, let's keep goats for commercial purposes, there is a big market for goats out there. And young people, women, can be goat commercial farmers. So I think if we learn from Uganda and we say we're going to keep goats for commercial purposes, and we do that, then people will have income, but there'll be food, milk for children.
Yeah.
You know? So we can look at each country and say, what are they best in? Then we say, okay, if it's something we can learn from them, let's learn from them. And we shouldn't think that each country is an island. No, we should be cross-pollinating ideas and learning from one another and getting the continent to rise.
Now we have good relations with both part of BRICS, South Africa and Russia. But there's still many avenues where we could be going. For example, our economic trade turnover is not too impressive, let's put it this way. But we have a potential for for better projects, for more projects between us. What would you say, first of all, what's the general attitude as you see of South Africans to Russia, and where we could be going together, in which areas you see it's most convenient?
South African government and the people who were in the struggle have known Russia during the Soviet times. They know how helpful it was to our struggle. Now, we think we should cooperate more on the economy. But also Russia, during those days, trained a lot of young people in different professions. So I think Russia can continue with that as well. Training, skills, but also train here in terms of, just let me make an example of fertilizers. It can train people on the continent on how to make fertilizers from lime, from whatever. So transferring skills, skills transfer would be a very good idea coming from Russia, because they've done it before, they've trained us before, but trained us in Russia.
Yes.
Now can they do skills transfer here on the continent, amongst other things?
Yeah, that could be a good idea, but probably we need to, we were thinking about coming more out to South Africa, including on a university level, and maybe establishing something like, I don't know, faculty or a wider university jointly with some local one to do that. So but I was not sure how much it is needed, but if you say this is really on demand, we would definitely be happy to do that.
Yeah, you can also work with us, establish science academies and so on. So I think there's a lot that can be done.
What would be your message to Russian young, not, by the way, to Russian people who still remember the Soviet Union and have this very warm attitude to Africa, to South Africa, because I know many people who were also involved in also training of people who would fight apartheid. And also to the young Russians who look at you as a role model for success, no matter what barriers come across you. What would be your message to them? Would it be the same, or you would think you have to deliver different ones?
I think to the older people who feel warm towards us, we also feel very warm towards them. That's why we have a good relations with Russia, because we still remember what the Soviet did for many of us, not just South Africans, but for many countries. Even myself, I didn't train in Russia, but I went invited by the Komsomol the first time I went to Russia. So I still have very fond memories. But to young people, now we must build a multilateral world where there is no superpowers. There are people who respect every everyone. We should respect everyone. We should try and build a peaceful world. But of course, the problem is if we don't all build a peaceful world, then people have to be able to defend themselves from those who may be aggressive. But we need to strive for peace, strive for development across the globe. And also, as I say, development and peace have to go together, but also respecting human rights, justice for all, equality. We should also fight against this gross inequality, because gross inequality produces anger. If you are sitting this side in squalor, and across there you see obscene opulence. That's why if you look at research, violent crimes are more common in places where there is gross inequality. So we must try and do away with that. And then we would have a more peaceful world.
Yeah, we all want peace and peaceful world.
Yes, and we must respect women, no violence against women. Women should be equal and should participate equally in the development of our continent, of our countries, of the world. Because we also know women are in the majority. It's not an accident that they are in the majority. They give birth to everybody else. There would be no one, there would be no women, human if women went on strike and said, we're not going to give birth.
The world would die.
Yes, humanity. Women are, one of their important tasks is the continuation of the human race. So they must be respected, they must be given their rightful place, and they must be allowed to be part of the leadership in every area of human endeavor.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for being with us today. It was truly, a very interesting, emotional discussion, and I did get a lot of things for me. I'm quite sure for our Russian listeners. I would like to take this opportunity also to invite you to Russia. You see the modern one. We'll be happy to host you and have their, and if you agree, for example, to deliver a lecture to our students at the university, I believe it would be extremely interesting. Besides, young people, they always have those very deep questions that us grown-ups sometimes forget about, but they look right into the root cause. It's very important. So please choose the time, and would be really, really happy to see you in Moscow and also show you wider Russia if you're willing to. Please come. We'll try to give you a better tour and to show you more. Besides, Russia is also bigger, 11 time zones. So if you go to Vladivostok or Kaliningrad, it's
And I went by train from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and I enjoyed that.
Perfect. Thank you so much once again.